down. If you leave it right where it is now, we won't hear you. It's the way these mics are. You kind of got to. Yep, that'll do you, Betty.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Can we have the roll call, please?
Doing roll call.
I'll do roll call.
Okay,
I'm Secretary of the Board.
right.
Betty Misaraka,
Present.
Here.
Lolita Haley,
Present. Present.
Hubert Massey,
Hubert Massey is excused.
Present.
Yeah, you got to use your microphone. Like I told everybody. And then bring the mic down. You got to be right on top of it.
do you want me to do the
See,
roll
that's
call
good.
again?
No, we got that. Just so we hear from later.
The approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair, if, you know, we kind of set this special meeting up because we have a deadline to get the audit to the state, and that's July. So we couldn't wait till August to talk about the audit because we'd be late submitting it to the state. So purposely kept the agenda short. You know, we've got a meeting coming up in August to have the DIA yet. So I was trying to keep the agenda short, and but I would like to add an item 3 to have an update on our search for a lawyer and our board retreat. Mr. Grady Muhammad and myself have been meeting on that a few times, and so I think to leave a little room there for Mr. Grady Muhammad just to give us an update on that, and people can have questions. So I would move to add item 3 to the agenda, discussion of the hiring an attorney and hiring and having our board retreat.
Do we have to vote on that or we just accept that?
Well, I would then move then that we approve the amended agenda, and that would be the vote.
You have just moved that.
Sorry?
You just moved that
Yeah,
yourself.
I'm moving the amended agenda and to include an item 3 for the discussion.
Second support.
It's been a move and support. Any, all in favor?
All right?
Aye.
No opposition? Any opposition? Amendment, motion carried. Approval of the May 15th, 2023 meeting minutes. We can't hear.
Hit it once and your red light comes on. You can't always see it.
Oh, okay.
That's when you're on.
On the motion to amend the agenda, who was the maker of the motion?
Delete
The second?
seals.
Thank you.
Unanimous vote.
Now, it's the report from the chair.
Oh, we still got to take care of the minutes. Move adoption of the previous minutes from the last meeting.
Second. Yes. All in favor?
Was that,
Aye.
was that Lolita?
Lolita, correct.
Thank you, Lolita.
Aye. Motion carried. Now for the report from the chair. Unfinished business?
You have none.
Unfinished business? New business?
Under new business, Madam Chair, item 1 is discussion and a vote on approving the audit, which is in your packet, and you also have a, what do you call it? A presentation that was handed out by the auditors today. And I think that's gonna, yeah, that's gonna go up on the screen, so you have it for you. So I'd like to introduce, and I'm sorry, sir, your name again?
Jan Kutsenkov.
Yeah, from Allen Young and Associates, who we see a lot around the county. They audit a lot. You do other boards of the county, and we've had you over at the Mental Health Authority, various places. So so we have an audit before us, so you should have, it's up on the screen, the PowerPoint, and the full audit is in your packet. So I'd like to turn it over to, if it's appropriate, Madam Chair, Allen Young and Associates to run us through the audit, and we can discuss it.
Okay, my name is Jan Kutsenkov. I'm a senior auditor with Allen C. Young. I will go through a few disclosures before we move into the actual report. If you turn to page 3 of the presentation, you will see that in our audit report, we clearly express the responsibilities of the management and the auditors. The financial statements are the responsibility of the management, and our responsibilities to express an opinion on those financial statements based on the audit. And without further ado, I would like to say that we have issued, in draft form, unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance that we can issue. On the next page, we have a little more communication about how we arrive to our opinion. We have audited the financial statements based on the generally accepted auditing standard.
Sir, if I can stop you, because you also do the audit for the Zoo Authority,
Yes, sir.
and you sent out both PowerPoints
Yes, sir.
in one email, and it
Yes.
looks like our staff picked up the Zoo Authority one.
Oh, on the screen. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if it's easy to pick up the other one that's in the email.
They're both attached.
We're waiting for the, as I mentioned, Allen Young does both the Zoo Authority and the Art Authority. And they sent an email over with their PowerPoints, but they had both the Zoo and the Art Authority in one email. And our staff just happened to pick up the Zoo Authority first, rather. So that was up on the screen. So now we have the Art Authority up there. So we're ready to go. Thank you, Gagny.
As I was saying, in our auditor's report, we have performed the audit based on the generally accepted auditing standards, and we have, and based on that, our objective is to express reasonable assurance, which is not absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements. We further have some additional disclosures we need to, or communication we need to.
Say what page you're on, sir, so we're
I
all-
am on page 6. I think the pages are moving. on screen. Our audit was performed as per the scope in our engagement letter. We have received full cooperation from the management. The significant accounting policies are listed in footnote number 2 of the report. And those policies are neutral and consistent. There is no bias used in those disclosures. We have had no disagreements with the management, and to the best of our knowledge, they have not contacted other company or other CPA accounting firm to discuss any policies or disagreements with us. At this point, I've completed with the required communications, and I'm going to move to the actual numbers of the report. That is page 7 of the presentation. Due to the nature of the authority, all the money that are collected from property taxes are transferred to the Detroit Institute of Art Society. So at the year end, there is no assets or liability or fund balance or net position. So the more exciting part would be the statement of activities.
Madam Chair, if I may, on that point, on page 7, right, it's talked about, you're talking about the net position of the art authority,
Correct.
right? Yeah, well, we got to bring some people up to speed.
Okay.
I've looked at audits for years. Not everybody looks at audits all the time. So the point of page 7 is we haven't had expenses as an art authority. So whatever was collected in taxes went right to the DIA. And so as far as the art authority is concerned, we're zeros.
Well, by nature of the way the art authority said, all the money that are collected are paid out to the
Right. And that's what this
the
shows.
society. Yes.
It's not like we kept any money or anything.
Yes. This basically says you have no cash or assets left at year end, and you have zero liabilities, money owed to anybody.
Lean into the mic, please.
I would like to bring up the fact that there were some expenses. Barbara Rogel Miller and some others that parked down here when came to the meetings. Is that part of his conversation? Want to talk about expenses?
Yeah, we will, we'll pick that up on the next parking one. But yeah, we have not reimbursed anybody on this board for that yet. So that, and that's one thing everybody's been asking about, right? Getting that taken care of. But we have had no expenses where we have, you know, we're talking about hiring a lawyer. We put a place in the budget for it. But in that sense, Maria, it's not like we have paid, we haven't taken anything out of the proceeds to pay board members for parking or anything else in these 2 years.
But we've had legal expenses, is that correct?
No, we haven't, not in these 2 years. Legal
I was
expenses.
concerned about legal expenses, if we had any.
We have not had that, but that's why we added some money to the budget, because Stephen and I have been talking about hiring and narrowing in on who we can hire for an attorney. But we have not had those expenses yet.
Just to clarify, this is as of December 31st, 2022 and 2021. So any expenses incurred after that would not be presented in this financial statements. So if we move to the next page, you can see that the authority collected a little over $9 million in property taxes, approximately 0.2% millage on property, and the entire amount was transferred to the Detroit Institute of Art Society, which resulted in no change in the net position and remained zero at year end.
If I may, sir, again, that net position means the Wayne County Art Authority. us
Correct.
as a legal body.
Correct, sir.
So all this is showing is everything that was collected in taxes was properly sent to the DIA. And as far as the Art Authority is concerned, we're at zeros.
Correct. No money had left at year end. All
Yeah,
the
we're
money
not-
that was collected was paid to the society.
No little bank accounts on the side where we're getting richer.
No. As far as we're aware of. We have also looked at the internal controls of the society as part of our audit risk assessment. We're not engaged into issuing an opinion on the internal controls, but we did not notice any material misstatement, material weaknesses or significant deficiency in the internal controls. Just to let you know, since that wasn't the scope of our audit, there could be still material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that existed that we just did not pick up as part of our audit and risk assessment. At this point, I've completed with presenting the numbers and the disclosures. Is there any questions I can address?
Madam Chair? Yes, through the chair. First of all, I would like to thank you for the work that you did on the audit. It was a 2-year audit that we received this time,
Correct.
which I think is unusual for us. Usually we receive an annual audit, but I think Member Colleen requested a 2-year since we were a bit behind on everything, maybe because of COVID and everything like that. We had received along with your PowerPoint presentation, we had received an independent, let me see, I want to make sure I get the right title here of the document. Financial report with supplemental information, which contained the independent auditor's report. And on page 13 is the required supplemental information budgetary comparison schedule for years 21 and 22. And I was looking at some of the information here. You got 4 columns here of revenue and expenditures for both years. You got your original budget column, your final budget column, what happened actually, and then favorable and unfavorable variances. In 2021, you had an unfavorable variance of $214,586. In 2022, you had an unfavorable variance of $465,889. So, and I need you to unpack this for me and explain it to me, but it looks as though the budgeted amount that we figured we would collect in the millage for 2021 is $8,998,149. But the actual that we collected with the millage was $8,783,563, which left an unfavorable variance of $214,586. That's for 2021. In 2022, we budgeted for $9,508,382, but actually only collected $9,042,493, which gave us an unfavorable variance of $465,889. Can you explain to us why we didn't collect what we were supposed to collect?
Well, the actual numbers are what the county actually collected on the millage. And I don't know why, how the original budget was calculated, what were the assumptions that fell into it, but the actual money that was received from property taxes millage was in 2021, 8,783,000, and in 2022, 9,043,000.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, if I can,
Mhm.
what you can do is on an ongoing basis, maybe there should be a budgetary versus actual comparison, and maybe amendments to the budget needs to be made throughout the year based on the actual funding that comes in as it compares to the projected numbers in the beginning.
So I've reviewed a lot of budgets myself, and I understand the basic process. Where my concern comes in is we had an amount that we calculate we were going to have, but then when it came down to the actuals, it was less than that. And then I'm seeing expenditures, distributions to the Detroit Institute of Arts. For 2021, that was 198,586. For 2022, that doubled to 446,669. There were also professional fees that were expenditures, 15,000 in 2021, 18,100 in 2022, and then other expenses for roughly about $1,000 in 2021 and almost $1,100 in 2022. I don't know what those are, and your audit did not explain for me what they are, and your audit did not explain why the variance. And I would have expected the audit to unpack that for me before I approve an audit. I would need to understand all of the data in here.
Okay, so as you already discussed, you had probably planned on having some legal expenses in the last 2 years, and also some other expenses maybe related to parking or, but in reality, you did not end up spending this money.
Mhm.
For that reason, actually this money there was no money spent on legal expenses or any miscellaneous other expenses, which the $1,000 were. So maybe the thinking behind the budget was that you guys planning to do this, but our opinion is on the actual numbers, and those are what was collected by the county, and those were what was eventually paid to the TIA Society.
I actually kind of discussed this with a colleague yesterday, and my concern is the same. Even what we had budgeted for legal expenses and things like that, over this 2 years, that comes to $680,000, $475. And again, that is still unexplained in this report. And when we are approving a report, we are approving what we see, not what we assume. So my concern, like Stephen Muhammad said, is that it is not here. It is not in front of me, and we are approving what's in front of us. So there's still a concern there for me too.
And again, as I said, we're expressing an opinion on the financials that actually happened, not on the budgetary variances. We're not involved in the process of setting up the budget. So, that is an estimate. So even in financial statements, even though these do not have it, sometimes we're going to put estimates with the disclosure that in reality, they might change over time just because it's a best estimate at the time that with all the information that we have, but over time that might change. So That's basically what we're looking at here is we have a budget that was set with certain assumptions, but in reality, the money that was received and spent is on actual numbers. Maybe the county did not collect as much taxes. Maybe there was some other reasons why the collections did not match your projections.
Go ahead, Madam Chair. Go ahead.
Got to speak into the mic. We're being taped, you know.
My question was, how do we make this, if we're approving this, we have to, who is going to put the wording in, like he explained we can't just approve it just as is. We have to have some exceptions or state why we're approving and what we're approving, right? As opposed to just overall blank doing it?
Madam Chair? Yes, ma'am. Member Colleen, the Vice Chair Colleen did let me know that we have, I think, a fiduciary responsibility to approve this audit. Member Colleen, what is that date?
June
1st
30th.
of July.
1st of July. The
State
first.
has to have it,
Okay.
yeah.
So we only have a little bit of time. We received this audit kind of late and our backs are up against the wall. Yes, ma'am. So for me, I would need to understand this close to 5% money that was a distribution to the Detroit Institute of Arts in 2021, 198,586, in 2022, 446,699. I would need to see some type of documentation that shows me what specifically that money was spent on. It was a distribution to the Institute of Arts, but it doesn't appear to be included in the money. You've got two separate expenditures here. You've got an actual expenditure, then you've got a variance, but it's an expenditure. So I'm not understanding that. Maybe you could provide for us some explanation of this. I mean, if you want my vote for it, I would need an explanation of it before I gave you an affirmative vote.
I totally understand your concern, but the budget is responsibility of the management. The budget is responsibility of the management. We can only affirm that the actual numbers were what they were.
So what you're in essence, you're saying is you can only go by what was given to you to
Mhm.
respond to. So at this time, our concern is more with the DIA and what they said they spent the money
Yeah.
on. So what he is in
Mhm.
essence, what he's saying is that he can only document what was given to him to document. So now our concern is we need to be able to go back to the DIA and ask them, what is this? What are these expenditures that you are saying are some professional? If we don't understand it, he's saying that he does not have that information, which is understood.
Mhm.
But that was for the DIA to provide. They have a responsibility to provide that information
Mhm.
when we are asking it for an audit.
Ms. Sills, I don't believe that's what I said. There is no unexplained expenditures here. The county collected $9 million from property taxes for the authority, and we verified that the authority, based on their fiduciary responsibility, transferred all this money to the DIA. The authority management has projected that these funds are going to be $9.5 million in the budget that you approved before the beginning of the year. The actual collections that this county received were only $9 million. So for that reason, you can only transfer up to that amount to the Detroit Institute of Art Society.
I think my question or my statement was more to professional fees and other expenses that you said that you couldn't explain.
There is no professional fees or expenses. Those were budgeted, but they were not actually spent. The entire tax money that was received was transferred to the DIA Society. And no professional fees were spent. We're able to verify the funding coming in from the county and going to the DIA for all the taxes that were collected from a third party, which is the Wayne County.
Madam Chair? Yes, ma'am. So basically what you're saying is we have a variance column that doesn't impact what occurred, the transfer of funds to the DIA?
I'm not 100% following your question.
You said that you could not speak to the professional fees and the other expenses that added up along with some distribution to the Detroit Institute of Arts to variances of over $200,000 in 2021 and almost $500,000 in 2022. But you're saying that didn't happen? Did it happen? Didn't it happen?
That did not happen. The actual numbers they did not spend any money on professional fees or other expenses. That was budgeted by either management and the board approved it, but these expenses did not occur during the year.
So why is this column on your audit?
It's a required supplemental information.
Required
GASB.
supplemental information that means nothing.
It should mean a lot to the management.
It's meaning a lot to me, and I'm an authority board member.
Absolutely, sir.
So I'm not understanding this. Madam Chair, I'm not comfortable approving this audit until some of my questions are answered. I don't know what is the pleasure of the other members of the authority, but that's my position. I'm not comfortable approving this audit until I understand everything on here.
Yes, Commissioner Colleen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry on the name. Your name, sir.
Yonko Tsenkov?
Yes, sir. Okay. Let's look at these numbers and we'll start at the top. Under original budget in 22, you had the original budget, $9,508,000. That number was taken from the report that we approve. Every August, we get the authority gets a report from the Equalization and Assessment Department of Wayne County that shows what the tax collections were for that year. It also shows on there the millage amount for, and you do this for the zoo as well. And then you multiply the two, and that tells you what the number is from the county that should go to the DIA, less any expenses, okay? So we approve that. But then when you get over to the treasurer's office, they actually cut a check to the DIA, okay? So our report from Equalization and Assessment showed $9,500,000. That is verifiable, and you have verified it. And then what you do is you go over to the treasurer and you say, hey, how much did you write the check for?
And how much did you collect? Both things.
Yeah, and they came up with 9,042,000. Is it unusual to have a variance like that?
There could be different variance between the amount that was billed and the actual amount that was collected.
Yeah.
So there could be a timing difference that result over time and actual collections. So if your report was based on the assessment and the county did not receive all the property taxes that were levied, the collection would have been lower than the actual billed property taxes. And for that reason, the amount that would have been recorded for the authority would be lower than the actual amount that was billed.
So is that, and that's not an unusual circumstance that happens?
That does happen, yes.
Oh.
And that's why, I'm sorry but I want to finish my thought. That's why, we have property taxes from municipalities getting moved to the county level. And then if the county fails to collect those, they get moved to the state level. So every higher level has a more authority to follow up on the collection of these taxes.
So what we see from equalization and assessment that we approve every year, that's equalization and assessment saying, this is what we think is going to happen. And so that becomes, as far as the auditors are concerned, that number that we approve in August, and we'll do it again this year, is like our budget number for us. So we approve that. This is what equalization thinks. We approve it. A month or two later, with the collection of taxes over at the treasurer's office, they might come back and say, well, tax collections weren't exactly the same as what we thought when equalization made the report. So they write the check on the actual dollars. So that's where the variance comes from. The report that we approve from equalization is what we think we're going to collect. The actual, so that's the original budget. The actual is what the treasurer actually calculated after collections. And those numbers aren't necessarily the same at all. You see variances on that all the time, I'm sure. And so that's the explanation for why there's that variance. Equalization assessment says in August, this is what we think we're going to collect. I don't know if you know the date on the check, but it's probably sometime in December that the treasurer writes the check to go to the DIA, because the millage runs from January to December. So they'll write a check at the end of the year. So there you have September, October, November in between, and the actual property taxes collected may be different from the beginning, and that's what you're showing here.
Yes, and that variance is actually a net effect of taxes not paid and also collections on delinquent taxes from the previous year. So
Yeah. So you throw that number in too.
yes, so that is the, whatever the actual collections are, and some of those collections might be on the previous years.
Yeah. And so when you look at total expenditures, we thought for that year, on their original budget, it'd be 9.5 million. You go over to actual, on that line, total expenditures, what it actually was what they sent to the treasurer sent to the DIA, and then what was the difference between the two. Right. But that doesn't, there's no, that's not unusual if there's a variance, and what you're doing is you're showing us the variance.
Correct.
And why the two numbers aren't exactly the same. You also, in your audit to us, I would highly recommend, and I'm glad Mr. Grady reads it, reading those audits in detail, I think is a responsibility of every board member. You began the presentation by saying Alan Young is issuing an unmodified opinion. What does that mean?
That means that the amounts reported, we're in agreement with them. We don't have any disagreement based on our audit procedures. We have verified those amounts. We have received satisfactorily supporting documents that these amounts were correct.
So you looked at what we sent you and our budgets, right? And then you looked at actual and you went through all of that and you say, yeah, all of this adds up.
Yes.
So we're giving you unmodified opinion. I would, unmodified opinion is a good thing. You want the number. So I'm going to ask if we go back to, or members can go to page 6 of this PowerPoint. Page 6 of the PowerPoint. Members of the board. If you're not familiar with audits, this is what it is. And people do get hung up on the language of audits. You reported to us that you did this audit according to GASS, the Government Accounting Standards, that are national
Generally
standards.
accepted auditing standard.
What's that?
Generally accepted auditing
Yeah,
standard.
generally accepted, yeah. The GAAP, accounting practices, this is what all auditors have to do when they audit public or private, I would imagine. And so for public entities, it is all set out legally how you have to do it. So I would have people take a look at that page 6. Because these are standards for everyone. We're kind of a small operation, but some operations are huge and you really got to go through it. So what they gave to us today, if you look at these 6 panels, is the result of the audit. They also have to express whether there was cooperation from management, right? We emailed back and forth. You were like, send me this. Oh, that's not complete. Send me that. And so we exchanged information back and forth on what you needed. And so auditors have to say, did management cooperate with us or were they fighting us all the way? Right? That's important in a public audit. Then they go into significant accounting policies, which are described in the report, as they say, the significant accounting policies used by the authority. And you express here that the policies were consistently applied and there were no changes, right? So there was nothing funny there. And then the quality of the accounting policies, you discuss that in the report too. If an auditor thinks, hey, you could strengthen this a little bit, your numbers are right, but you should strengthen your policies on how you're keeping track of money, they will discuss that in the report. No disagreements with management is the next one. And you also have to check that who you're auditing, we haven't gone to some other auditor and said, give us different numbers. You have to verify that for a public audit, that there are no other consultants that we use to your knowledge, no other audit firms. It's only you that have looked at the numbers. And so I encourage people to go back and read the entire audit. It is a wealth of information. And it also will describe, because I've learned a few things here too. One of the things that happened with the back and forth here is the original budget I presented. I actually had it on the fiscal year for the county. It was a 21-22 budget, I think, because the county fiscal year starts October 1 and goes to September. So of the following year. So we have, our budgets are described as fiscal year 21-22. But for the purpose of the millage is on the calendar year from January to December. So there's no 21-22 when you have a calendar year. So we had to clarify that for the auditors, right? No, okay, that really wasn't a 21-22. We labeled it wrong. So we've learned a lot about what you need as an audit, first time we've done it, right? And how we present the information to you and what exactly information you need. I learned something about our minutes too and that kind of stuff. So I encourage everyone to read the full audit, but what you're looking at on these variances, what we thought was going to happen when we got the report from equalization and assessment, and then what actually happened 4 months later. And as the auditor said, sometimes there's some other tax collections that come in that affect what the total is for the year, maybe previous year taxes that got paid that we weren't expecting or something like that. So when it came time to actually cut the check in December, the calculation by the treasurer, given the tax collections and what the millage rate is, when we calculated that in August, 9.5 million. When the treasurer calculated it in December, he was like, yeah, we didn't collect as many taxes as we thought. So what we actually are going to do is, you know, you have to multiply the millage by a smaller number because tax collections weren't as expected. And so the amount of money that goes to the DIA is reduced. And you have verified both of those numbers, right?
Correct.
Our number and what the treasurer did.
And
So I'm not disturbed at all by the variance, you know, that just is what happens. We're going to probably see that every year, every audit.
correct, sir. Also, we have disclosed the actual taxable values and the mileage in on page 10 of the audit report. And you can see that also is not matching because this is the theoretical property taxes. This is not the actual collections.
Right.
So the numbers that we see on the financial statements, again, are the actual collections by the county. They cannot transfer more money than what they have collected on those property taxes.
Madam Chair, if I may. Yeah, we're down here today because the Wayne County Commission staff is in our usual meeting room because there's a mental health training going on for our staff. But our chief of staff for the commission, Pam Lane, who I think all of you have met in one way or another, is not only up in the training, but she's monitoring the meeting. So she just sent me a text saying it's due to the state by June 30th. Just for clarification.
So you shaved the extra day off, right?
Well, I knew when we had talked about it the first time, right? Because I kind of found out a little late from staff. Of course, staff up there has been dealing with the zoo and they've been doing their regular audits. And actually it'd be nice to show them the zoo audit today too. So they could see the same thing happen over there, that there's a variance in the budget because, you know, it's nothing nefarious. But when we were narrowing in on getting the audit done with you guys, and I'm talking to staff upstairs, they're like, oh, your August meeting is too late. We have to get that date in. I just find this out about a month ago, you know? And it's like, okay, we have to call a special meeting then to beat the date. And I had in my mind that it was July 1st because she was like, we have to get it to them by July. So I thought July 1st, but actually it's June 30th. So that's the date we're required to submit these to the state, June 30th.
Madam Chair. Microphone is on now. Okay, so just for clarification, why are we calling distributions to the Detroit Institute of Art? Why are we calling that discrepancy a distribution? The discrepancy is between the anticipated amount and the actual amount. No money, from what you're saying, then no money was received by the DIA other than the actual amount. So why are we calling the distribution, calling the gap, the distribution to the Detroit Institute of Arts? They didn't receive it.
Sorry, sir, but again, the way to look at this is that we have an estimate from equalization.
I understand that.
Let me finish. Earlier in the year, like in August, this is what we think is going to happen. Okay. The treasurer doesn't write the check till December sometime. And so what we thought was going to happen with property tax collection turns out not to be exactly what actually happened a few months later. So then the treasurer does the calculation based on the actual taxes collected and says, no, it's really not 9,500,000. Tax collections were a little lower. So we're only going to write them a check for 9,042,000. And that's the actual. So when it says distributions to the Institute of Arts, in the original budget, we thought it was going to be 9,500,000. The actual was what the treasurer actually wrote, which was 9,042,000, which means between our original idea and our budget, it turned out to be $440,000 different. That's all that is. Did I help?
So no, because we're calling that an expenditure.
Yeah. So, and it's just,
Why don't we let the accountant respond to that? I mean, the attorney. Let him answer the question for her, Tim.
is anybody else confused on that?
No, so I
What we
also
thought
wanna,
was going to happen, what actually happened? And here's the difference.
I also want to add that it's not 3 or 4 months difference. You probably approved the 2022 budget in 2021. So it's a year, a little over a year of what the actuality happened versus when you projected. So the projections are based as of August of 2021, and we have collections through 2022 as of December 31st. So that's nearly 16 months after the projections.
I get it now. The figure of 446 is the variance. It's not a distribution.
Right,
I get it.
right. That's saying, we thought we were going to send this much.
Yeah.
The treasurer actually
get
had
it.
this much. Here's the difference, they call it. And I think it is language that's hanging people up here a little bit, because this isn't the way we talk about it in our normal, you have it in official audit language. And so they look at it like, well, that 9,500,000, that's our budget. We don't necessarily talk about it that way here. We talk about our budget only as expenditures. So we might hire a lawyer, might do a few other things. We don't talk about the 9,500,000 as our budget, but for purposes of auditing, right? We thought it was going to be 9,500,000. We passed it, sent it to the auditor for the audit. A little while later, it turns out that's not the exact number because of collections. So they're showing us that too. This is what you guys thought was going to happen. Here's what actually happened from the treasurer a couple, 3 months later. And here's the difference between the two. Right? It's not, that's all it is. It's not like there's 400,000 laying around somewhere. Yeah, okay.
Madam Chair, this is going to be my final comment. I've sat here and I've listened to the Art Institute tell us how they, you know, in their enthusiasm for what they're doing, they have overspent several areas. But this audit indicates to me that the amount of money that we figured we were going to get from a millage and what we actually collected from a millage and what we passed to them was significantly less. So I don't understand where their overspending is occurring. I know in my household, if I get my check and it's a little less than what I thought it was going to be for that pay period, maybe I'm not able to pay some bills at that particular time because I didn't have the money that I had budgeted. So I'm not going to overspend something unless I'm pulling out of another pot and going into debt somewhere else. So my original thought stands. I am not comfortable with this audit, and I will be a no.
Got to use your mic, Betty, because this is a public meeting and people got to be able to hear you outside this room.
The word overspend is not a good word to use when we're making a vote. So I understand what's being said, and I agree with you.
Yes, ma'am.
So how do we resolve this?
I may, Madam Chair?
Of course,
What Mr. Grady Muhammad is raising has nothing to do with this audit. Regardless of how much money gets sent to the DIA every year, we still have our, what's our agreement called? Service agreement,
Service agreement.
right? And it's within the service agreement that we specify out of the proceeds of the millage, DIA, you have to spend this much on bringing students down. You have to spend this much on seniors, teacher training. We specify that in there. What the DIA has been reporting to us and is that what we have agreed to in the service agreement is they go over the amounts in the service agreement. But that's just within the 9 million that they get or whatever they get for that year for the taxes. It doesn't change anything. They're deciding, okay, we agreed to spend this much, but we're going to spend a little bit more out of the proceeds. It has nothing to do. Am I being clear on this? It has nothing. No. Okay.
Overspending part is when you lost
Well, you
me.
explain to me how that then affects this audit.
The overspending part, where is the money coming from? In the term you said it had something to do with our agreement.
The
So I
proceeds,
didn't
the
understand when
money
you
comes
said
from the
that.
proceeds
Let her finish her
of
statement.
the taxes. The proceeds of the taxes. So we send them 9 million, whatever. And that comes from the county, comes from the treasurer. Out of that 9 million, they're spending money on the service agreement, right? And if they agreed to spend 200,000 on bringing students down and they spend 220,000, then that's all just still out of the 9 million. It doesn't change a thing as far as this audit or as far as the financials go. It doesn't change. You have to, what we think was going to happen, what the treasurer actually sent. Out of that money that they actually get, we have a service agreement saying spending this on this, this on this. If they go over those numbers within the service agreement, that means they're spending less on other things that they could use it for. This is not changing anything, right? It's not changing anything. So, yeah, and also I'll comment that we early on, Madam Chair, and you'll recall, we met with everybody. The DIA does its own external audit, okay? So they hire a firm like Young to audit their books, and they report that to the DIA board. And my bet would be right now that in that audit, there's going to be variances from what they thought was going to happen in the budget and what actually happened. But one of the things we did in that, Madam Chair, is we added the 3 authorities all agreed, it was a number of years ago, to add into the DIA's external audit the numbers that are in the service agreement. So in addition to doing the audit, they look and they say, okay, in the Wayne County Service Agreement, you were supposed to spend 200,000 on bringing students down to the DIA. What did you actually spend? Right? And so that's reported to the full DIA board and reported back to us, right? Then in their external audit, does it, and that's what we wanted. We wanted that protection. Okay, they say they're going to spend this in the service agreement. Do they actually do that? And the way you get that is through their external audit, where the auditors go in and look at their books and they go, oh yeah, this is what they spent on bringing seniors down on buses and everything. This is what they spent on students. And so that's in the DIA audit to make sure that the numbers in the service agreement actually get fulfilled by the DIA once they get all the money. But again, in this matter, There's, it all adds up. What we thought was going to happen, what actually happened with the treasurer, here's the difference. But the auditors are bringing us an unmodified opinion because all of that correlates with general accounting standards for how this should be done. Yep, this is all right. This is what happened. This is what we thought at the beginning of the year in the budget. This is what happened later. There's a difference between the two, and here it is. And that difference is a result of lower than expected property tax. So I hope that helps. You know, audits, if you're not used to them, because they use different language than we do every day. I try to stay up on them as a part of your audit committee for all you Wayne County residents that, as a member of that audit committee, I'm up on that.
We finished that discussion. Is everyone satisfied with what we've heard?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Madam Chair,
Need a motion?
I guess if there's no other discussion, I guess it's motion time. I would move, my motion is a two-parter. I move that we accept the audit from Allen Young and Associates. And I'm going to, in the same motion, you'll notice, and this will be next year on our audit, because now we're spending money for the first time with an auditor. So I move that we pay this bill, which conforms to the contract that we had for the 3-year audit. This is 2 of the 3 years. So when we do the audit next year, it's going to be somewhere around $7,000, which is what we agreed to in the first place. So I move that we accept the audit and at the same time pay the invoice, $13,900 for the services of Allen Young and Associates.
I'd like to accept or second that, please.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye?
Maria was the second.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Yes, ma'am, I oppose, and I'm a no with a statement. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, for the purposes of the minutes, you want to do a roll call vote on that, please, Madam Chair?
We want a roll call vote, okay?
On the motion, just so that has it accurate in the minutes.
Tim Colleen,
Aye.
Lolita Healy. Maria Lambert.
Yes.
No with a statement. No with a statement, ma'am.
No.
Don't forget the chair.
Yes. Statement. Oh, you want the statement? Yes. Can you?
I will provide a written statement, ma'am, for the minutes that we can approve next meeting. Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can now.
Yes, ma'am. I will provide a written statement for you to include in the minutes for next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Grady.
Through the chair, this is Clerk Agneet Kangarat. Just for the record, since we were having some people having a hard time hearing on Zoom. So the motion passes with Mr. Mohammed and Ms. Seals as a no, and Mr. Mohammed will provide a statement for the minutes, correct? Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I mention the mics all the time. We are in the public, people are zooming in with us. The room is big, echoey. I used to teach in a room this big at Denby, so I can fill the room, but not everybody has a Denby classroom voice. And so for the public, they need to be able to hear us, so we need mic awareness.
Thank you for that, for your comments.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair, I dropped a proposed policy in the in our packet today, but that has changed. So I'm going to be making the motion in a minute to table that because it came on. So I've been in discussions with Tim Johnson on commission staff. And we are not the only board out there that has this parking issue and cost and money and that kind of stuff. So Tim notified me, well, we've been talking for a little while. The situation across the street at the Buell Street Garage, they've changed what they're doing over there. We used to be able to get some parking thing. We can't deal with them anymore. Wayne County owns a parking garage down at First in Congress. And for our boards, which include like the ethics board that hasn't had parking, on the specific dates of our meetings, you're going to be issued cards, scan cards. So you're just going to go in, scan, and then scan out. No cash involved. And they're going to set it up so it's just on the days that we meet. You can't go there some other day when there's not an official meeting and get free parking. And then however often those scan cards are used, then we will get a bill to the authority, which we will have to take out of the proceeds that go over to the DIA. But it's not going to be any money out of your pockets. It's going to be done by scan card, and then we're going to get one bill as an authority, which we will budget for, and then take out of the proceeds when we send it over to the treasurer to say, yeah, send this to the DIA, but we also have to pay this bill out of it. But it won't involve any cash money here. Now, this happened yesterday or the day before, so they weren't set up to do it today. But for our August meeting, and so pay attention to your emails, that's how it's going to work for the August meeting and every meeting after that. And we do pass our meeting schedule for the year. So we know all of the dates, the 4 dates. So,
Tim, how far is that?
huh?
How far is that?
That's about 6 blocks down. Now there is a shuttle, but then I had that you can hop on, but then I had security told me today they have like a morning and an afternoon shift. So the last shuttle that comes to this building in the morning is 9:30. So if you hit the 9:30 shuttle, they drop you right at the front door, no money. And
All of that
you're
is
20
going-
minutes early.
All
6
of that is-
blocks is not reasonable to me.
Say again?
6 blocks?
It's not reasonable, no.
That is not a reasonable suggestion for, how much is this anyway? How much is the parking for this 6 blocks away? per
Well,
person?
I don't know what the charges are down there in my
About
discussion.
how much? You have
Huh?
you have any idea?
No, and we can get more on this, but from my discussions with Tim the other day, he was like, well, the way it will work is authority members will just have a card to scan and the charges then don't go to you, they come to us. What those charges are, I don't know. But it's gonna be, you know,
The
20 bucks.
card, I like what you're proposing. I do not think it's reasonable for 6 blocks in the summer or the winter. That's not reasonable to me for you to pay for my parking. That's
No.
almost like to dissuade me from charging you.
Okay, yeah. Well, what we've run into, and maybe you're volunteering for this, Miss Haley, because we've had this discussion so many times at this meeting.
Nothing ever happens.
Through the chair,
Well, if I may,
can I
no, let me
ask a
finish.
point of
Let me finish.
clarification? Let me ask a point of
I'll yield to
clarification.
you, but let me finish.
Go ahead.
There is if we're gonna just reimburse for parking and you're gonna get directly reimbursed, there's some difficulties with that. What is the paperwork that shows you were parking on this day and at this time, right? We have to collect that so we can say this is a legitimate deduction, right? And then to get you reimbursed, do we do that for every meeting? Does that mean we're sending over bills to the treasurer for $80 at a time and say, cut these 4 checks to the people that parked and do that in small amounts like that? Is very difficult to do it that way. One way to do it is an annual reimbursement to say, okay, we're going to ask the treasurer to cut a check for the 4 times you paid for parking that year. But to try to get that paid, it's 2 things. It's a bookkeeping function. Who's keeping track of all that, right? Who's keeping track of and gathering from board members any information they have on what they spent on parking. And then it's a matter of the checks. So this way, which is what our employees all do, and the other employees in the building, like the Smith Group, using the shuttle and parking down there. So that is an option. I've also left this, and I'm going to suggest we table it. I just wrote a policy that said we'll reimburse every authority member up to $20 per meeting for parking. Then it's an easy thing budgetarily, right? 9 members, $20 a meeting, $180 a meeting, 4 times a year, $720. You put that in the budget, $720 for parking. We may not spend all of that, but then we have to, just like we went through today in gory detail. Hey, how come there's a difference here? We may only wind up spending $500, but we have to keep track of all that. Then at the end of the year, we'll say, oh, your original budget said send 20, but you only spent 500. And that will come up. But there's a lot of paperwork. But I'd be pleased if a member of this board said, okay, I'll take that on. We'll get that straightened around. And that's probably what should be required of the treasurer of the board to keep that. So when we vote for officers and we do our little board training, you know, we should be specifying it's the treasurer that gets this done, because everything winds up on my desk and I don't always get everything done in the middle of all of the other stuff I have to do. But this is, and it's been great meeting with Mr. Grady, have somebody else on the board that we can have discussions with and get into these and the progress that we're able to make, because we do that between meetings. But it'd be great if somebody wanted to take just that parking job on. What should it look like? Here's the policy. Here's how we're going to collect things.
Why don't we meet at the DIA and we don't have that problem?
Pardon me?
Why can't we move our place of meeting to the DIA?
Another thing would be to do that. Since we have some oversight of the DIA, I don't know if meeting there is appropriate. But yeah, we could have other, we don't have to meet here, right? If somebody knows a place where it's just free parking and you pull in and we can have a meeting in there. Of course, it would have to be available to the public, which is why we meet here, so we can Zoom and we have all the microphones. So I'd be delighted if somebody, I brought a policy today, but then that kind of changed with what Tim Johnson was saying. If somebody wants to go through that and say, hey, this is the way we should do the parking, I would love that.
I remember that the parking was $25, wasn't it, Barbara, over there where you parked?
That would be part of somebody to look into this, to do a survey of all the parking downtown and who charges what. I just know it's about $20. I just used a number. It's about $20.
If I may, the maximum across the street is $25, and the convenience for us is worth it. I think that $1,000 out of the 9 million that they get is a reasonable expense. I actually think going to the DIA would be advantageous for them, even because then we wouldn't be taking $1,000 from their budget.
The
All I have to
valet
say.
across the street was $15, and I think it was your recommendation a couple of years ago, Tim, that the closer places made more sense. I understand
Yeah.
your hesitation when you can put this as a line item with the other folks that have access to free parking, but I'd be remiss if I told you that I'm gonna vote for 6 blocks away. And I know it's a
Yeah.
lot of time we're spending on this, but right across the street is $15. Why can't we figure out how we can pay that $15 for us, huh?
Can I give you Tim Johnson's number and you can volunteer to call him and figure that out?
Who is Tim Johnson?
He's the kind of chief of staff for the chair of the commission. And see, we have all these other boards too that have to get reimbursed. And so he's trying to work that out as well. So Tim knows the parking situation downtown and to get into what's 15, what's 30. And if we go over there, right, and we park here, then at that point, because like this idea for the First Street, that it doesn't involve any money from any authority member, involve any paperwork where you're going to have to get a check from the treasurer to reimburse you. It doesn't involve any of that. Now, I understand what you're saying, the 6 blocks. So if we want to go over here across the street and use that garage, then how does that setup work? How do individual board members get reimbursed then? How often do they get reimbursed? Right? There's some trickiness here.
Well, you just told me that he's the go-to guy. Don't you think it's a possibility he might be able to assist with this since he's doing this anyway and he's got experience in this matter?
Well, I'm still searching for a volunteer. I think you can ask him those questions if you'd like to see this issue through and provide
I'll
something
call
to
him
the
and tell
board.
him
Yeah,
Tim
I'll give you
told
the
me to
number.
call him. Yeah.
It's always good. It's always good to have.
I'll tell him you told me to call him.
Absolutely. I'll beat you to the punch. I say, Lita's going to call you.
It's, what?
Yeah, I'll beat you to the punch.
Just talk to him when
He'll
you
know
tell
you're
him.
calling him before you actually do. But that's how to get it done, you know?
Okay. Thank you.
But, and then we can look at, well, it's really not on the table today, but then we can kind of look at my suggestion. That might be more of what happens over, you know, but then you can sort it out with the First Street. Yeah, because when I found out this morning from our security folks out here about the timing of the shuttles going back and forth, last one in the morning's 9:30. Then they don't start up again till 3 when people are getting out of work. And I thought, okay, that's something Tim didn't mention to me. Maybe this isn't exciting as I thought it was, but we should be able to work something out, have it for our August meeting. Somebody just needs to take it, Ms. Haley, and run with it and just nail down the details. That's all it's going to take.
Like walking them 6 blocks?
What?
You like walking those 6 blocks?
Every
I know I
day.
need to exercise.
Every day.
You do like it, even in the winter.
No such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing.
All right, just a question. So I apologize.
All
to the
year
board
round.
For the question.
I ride bikes year round. Doesn't bother me a bit. But yeah, I'm 6 blocks the other way. I'm behind the old county building in a surface lot. So I got to clean my car off. I'm not in some damn parking garage. So if it snows during the day, I got to handle that job too.
Well,
But
this-
yeah, if that's not in, then what is? And Tim Johnson's the kind of guy that in a conversation with them, he can give you, well, if it's not that, then this is how the other one has to work.
Why is Tim Johnson in charge?
There are a number of boards. I don't know what you mean in charge.
In
There's,
charge of what we do.
he's not in charge of what we do.
This is what,
There-
oh, maybe I didn't phrase that right. But if parking is an issue for this board, who is responsible then?
Well, the board is, but
But
let me answer your question. The commission has a number of appointments to a number of boards. To the Zoo Authority. That's what you should ask them. How do they reimburse the Zoo Authority people? We have all sorts of boards, the Ethics Board, Economic Development Boards, all sorts of boards. And the commission has appointments to them. So Tim, kind of as chief of staff, kind of monitors that kind of stuff. And they haven't only been hearing from us about parking, they've been hearing from a few of the other boards. So he's been going around looking at like, how else can we do this? How can we provide parking for our board members? Because the ethics board is about as happy as you guys are for paying for parking every time they come down. Hey, can we do this different? So Tim's been looking into this on behalf of all the boards that the commission appoints to. So he has the information. He'll be able to tell us, you can do it this way, you can do it that way. This is what these people do. That should be helpful. And
I think I'm going to ask Alicia.
pardon me?
I sit next to Alicia on another board. I'm going to ask her how they do it.
Who?
Alicia Bell.
Ask Tim Johnson when you call. A board member may or may not know that kind of detail,
I'm going to ask her.
but there's a way to do it. Yeah. But it would be good if you talk to her just to put a little more, let's get this done.
I sit next to her.
Yeah.
On to the next. Have any public comment?
We had a number 3 that was going to be added to this.
Alicia Johnson texted me to say it's 3 blocks. I don't go down that way. It's 3 blocks to the First Street garage.
We have, number 3 that Tim asked to be added to this agenda today about the lawyer.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Vice Chair, Colleen wanted me to give a few comments about our discussion about our lawyer that we are talking about, and he requested that it be added to the agenda. With your permission, I'd like to give those comments. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Actually, member Colleen, Vice Chair Colleen and I met really more so on the board development and training process. And we will have some information on that forthcoming as well. But in the course of meeting, we also discussed the legal advisor to the authority. And member Vice Chair Colleen more or less gave me his kind of assessment of both folks that we were considering, Floyd Allen and Todd Perkins. He felt that Mr. Allen's skill set would be a better fit for the board, but you have to consider Mr. Perkins' skill set as well. Is it a good fit for the board and what we might need? With member Seals having the responsibility to bring a recommendation for the board's approval, I think it would be appropriate for her to really weigh in and take that conversation over. Because it's her responsibility to provide a recommendation to us. So I would like to, having shared that, unless Vice Chair Colleen has anything else that he would like to share about our conversation, I'd like to turn it over to Member Seals.
Yeah, I'd like to add just a couple of things.
Sure.
But you threw me for a loop on that last one.
Mhm.
It's this board that's going to decide who the attorney is.
Mhm.
And so I think you and I talking about this, we can bring a recommendation. Who did you say we should turn that over to?
It wasn't a turnover, Vice Chair. Member Seals had the responsibility to bring a recommendation back to the
Member
board.
Seals, yeah,
Yes.
sure. Well, we'll do a little Zoom meeting or something, talk about the two possibilities.
Mhm.
But, and the only thing I raised was one of the two on there is criminal defense attorney, which is not exactly in our, and I know both of them very well.
Mhm.
And Mr. Allen, the county hires Mr. Allen for legal work in governmental areas. I've hired him over at the Mental Health Authority for more government kind of work. He does a lot of government work. But anyway, but yes, we also have been talking and looks like we're zeroing in pretty close on the kind of board retreat that we're talking about. So I know board member Mohammed has talked with the business school at Wayne State University, because their business school is right up here next to that ugly new arena that they built. And I am very, oh, it's horrible. I want the Olympia back. And I agree with the, because they can provide like a nonprofit board training. And I'm like, hey, if they can do it, you know, it's not time to go shop. So we'll talk more about it, but we may have those folks come in. But also in my discussions with Wayne County Corporation Counsel, the lawyers that work in the executive department, and I talked to the chief up there, and I guess you also have Mr. Grady Muhammad, because we want to do two things at the training. One is to have a lawyer just sit with us on the law that governs authority boards and run us through the state law. What does it say? What is our responsibilities? And so they've identified an attorney out of the Wayne County Corporation Counsel office that can do that. Then the other thing is to bring in a consultant that can do more of just a general board training, roles and responsibilities of boards. What do you got? You know, all of that kind of stuff. So we have a couple of ideas there, but it sounds like, you know, a lot of this is all the same. If it's Michigan State or if it's Wayne State, it's Wayne State. That would be great. And it's Ms. Kara Margot in Corporation Counsel.
Yes.
I always want to say Kara Magno because
I think it's.
that's Kara Magno is a food distributor, wholesaler over at the Eastern Market that I used to buy a lot of food from for the Cascorta Food Co-op. So when I see the name, I always say Kara Magno. But so we're narrowing in on this. And so there will be some news for you guys. Again, watch your emails. We'll be making recommendations. Probably the way it's going to practically work now is we will bring the proposals August to actually spend the money and then do a board training between August and our December meeting. Did I capture the conversation, sir?
Captured it. Pat, you went really past the first part.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I wanted to make
That's
sure
true.
that we're,
Through the chair, Member Colleen, you were very precise.
Okay.
That was our discussion.
Yeah.
I was just illustrating that as part of that discussion is how we got on the legal topic, our legal advisor topic.
right. Because then you were like, hey, on this other thing, I've talked to a couple of people or I have a couple of names, and that's when we started that discussion for legal counsel for this board.
So as we get back to my task about providing names for legal counsel, I did provide the names of Floyd Allen, who Tim has discussed, has done a lot of legal work for the county and that he knows quite well, along with Todd Perkins, who he stated is more of a criminal defense lawyer, but to my knowledge, and even if you guys had the opportunity to look at the website, the first thing that he mentions is his municipality background in law and things like that. So I just want to kind of put that out there. So as we're choosing, we were supposed to vote on this last meeting, but we postponed it and it's on the floor today. So my request through the chair is that we make a decision about the lawyer for this authority today between Floyd Allen and Todd Perkins, as Mr. Colleen requested earlier in when we first got started.
Excuse me, Renata, you're dropping your voice and it's hard.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I would like to make the motion to decide on which lawyer we're going to choose today, because we have postponed this. We are behind the 8 ball on this, and just to make the motion to choose the lawyer between Floyd Allen and Todd Perkins today. I would like to make that motion.
I second the motion.
Excuse me, can I have a clarification? It's to choose one or the other, or do you have a recommendation?
I also have a recommendation, and because Tim did provide the website, the email address, I mean, the websites, and when I read it, I leaned more towards Todd Perkins because he did talk about municipal law, and that is what we're doing here. And if we ever need advice or something like that, just based on what we see, because I'm not sure if anybody has personal relationships with either, because I don't. Based on what I read, I am recommending Todd Perkins at this time.
I second.
Remember your mic, Madam Chair. What did you say? Yeah, I need you on the mic.
I'm sorry. It's been moved by Renata, seconded,
Yes, ma'am.
and all those in favor?
Madam Chair, no discussion?
Oh, certainly.
Motion on the floor?
Yes, please.
All right, I'll disclose that I have personal relationships with both of them. One of them's a constituent. So I've known these folks for a long time. I don't necessarily, but has anybody talked directly to either attorney and said this is what we're looking for?
When I was assigned the task to look for lawyers, yes, I did talk to both of them. So yes,
So you talked to Mr. Perkins?
yes.
You know, if he thinks he can handle it, see, that was my first thing, you know. I've hired a lot of attorneys in my time and I thought, well, this guy knows government stuff inside out, hired him in a lot of places. And I know Todd, I know the cases he takes, right? Does criminal defense. I thought, well, maybe that's not necessarily in his line.
But according
you
to
wanna-
according to the website, it is directly in his line, and
Yeah,
so we can only go by what we see, and that is why I'm making that recommendation.
well, no, see, the other way you do these things too is you bring him to a meeting and say, we're recommending this guy, and other board members can ask questions because they're going to be the legal counsel for all of us. And we should all be comfortable with the attorney and know what they do. So I'm not saying no, right? If I have to vote on it today, I don't know.
Are we voting at this time with this motion?
But there's a motion on the
There's a
floor, yeah,
motion on the
sorry. So
floor.
those are my comments, Madam Chair.
In the, see, the red light isn't apparent.
I know.
Okay, this item was not on the agenda of the special meeting. I'm not sure that this vote is appropriate.
It was added, Commissioner Colleen asked for it to be added in the beginning of in the meeting, and we approved it. We okayed it.
Okay.
Yes,
Our secretary is correct. What I added to the meeting was just to have a report on the discussions we were having. It wasn't, members today did not look at their agenda and come to this meeting expecting that they were going to hire a lawyer at this meeting.
Right, we were supposed to do it at the last meeting and it was floored. And then at the beginning of this meeting, you made a motion to have the discussion.
Right.
I mean, you asked for it to be added to the agenda. And at this time, I just asked for the motion because you added it to the agenda.
What I added was a discussion item, not a decision item. Those are two different things.
It is.
And there was, and nobody submitted a motion for this meeting to go on the agenda to say, here's the recommendation for an attorney. So, you know, I don't think we'd be breaking any laws. Maybe we need our attorney to tell us this, that if we did take this up today, no, we don't have an attorney, that if we did take this up today, that we would be committing some sort of a mortal sin, you know, by taking it up. So I'm not overly concerned about that, but our secretary is right. We did not add to the agenda a decision-making item to the agenda. Oh, we have a proposal today. Let's add that to the agenda. What it was a discussion item. And then out of that came, well, let's do a proposal. So I don't know.
So
I'm not too worried if we vote.
Yes, please.
Well, and you asked us to add it to the agenda, and we have been discussing it, and some of us have looked at these two persons, and we both know that they have a staff. And for what I've read, both of them seem to be equipped to handle what we do.
That could be. I just know
And,
both the attorneys. I know the work they do. But see, again, I had this conversation with Mr. Grady Muhammad. Now I understand there's other conversations and you, but nobody brought a motion today. Nobody said, you didn't get together and you guys go, hey,
because
this is the
originally-
one we want to
because in the-
hire.
In the original email that you sent, well, in the last meeting, it was supposed to be brought up in our next meeting. Our next meeting happened to be a special meeting.
Right.
So when you brought up that you guys were having discussions and I was assigned to the task, I put the motion on the floor because it would seem like that if you're having discussions about the lawyer and it just on the surface, that I would be included in those discussions in the first place. And then I would have asked for it to be put on the agenda. But because I was not in the discussions with you and Mr. Muhammad, but I was assigned to the task months ago, I made a motion to do that. If I am incorrect in doing that, I'm okay with that. But if it is an option, I would like to
Well,
make the motion on
yeah.
the floor
Yeah, we
to
can do
vote for
that.
the lawyer at this time. If it is not an option, Madam Chair, we can table it until the next meeting, but I stand firm on my recommendation that Todd Perkins be the lawyer for this authority.
Well, I think when Mr. Muhammad and I got together, and we've gotten together twice, when we talked about this topic, I don't think I think your name came up, that you were the one kind of looking into this.
It has come up in every meeting and it's in the agenda notes for every meeting for the last 2 or 3 meetings that we've had. So it's not that it just came up, but I was actually assigned to the
If I can
task.
finish, thank you for interrupting.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
That I think in our discussions, it was like, hey, isn't board member Seals looking into this and that kind of, so again, I'm just going to say, and I think this is why the board training is going to be good too. You got to go about things a certain way as a board. If there's a motion to say, let's hire this person, that should be on the agenda. For the purposes of this meeting, because we had to fit a deadline by June 30th to get this to the state, it was like, let's keep this meeting. We got one coming up in August. Let's keep the special meeting, you know, focused, right? And so it was originally a 1-item agenda. Then we got some news on parking, so I wanted to report that. And then since Mr. Board Member Muhammad and myself have met a couple of times, let's just give a verbal description. So again, I don't think we're violating anything that if we do take a motion from the floor on this, but I think also for purposes of, just how we conduct business, that it should be, a motion should be ahead of time for all board members to kind of evaluate what they think. But anyway, so we have a motion on the floor, Madam Chair. Okay.
Yes, please, we,
Motion by Renata Seals that Todd Perkins be retained as the board attorney to lead board training. Second by,
No,
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 not to lead board training, to be the counsel for the article.
well, I did say that. Motion to hire Todd Perkins to be counsel to the board. Second by Mr. Mohammed. Second by Mohammed, and so now is the vote. Now, Madam Chair, we're ready for the vote.
is there any discussion or just the vote? Okay. So would you repeat the motion again, please, so it's clear? Todd,
Motion to retain as legal counsel to the board, Todd Perkins.
Yes, ma'am, I did second.
moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. He requested a roll call, Madam Chair.
Okay, roll call.
Call vote.
All.
Tim Colleen,
Call him up after the meeting. He's just across the street from us. I'm voting aye.
no, you're voting no.
No, aye.
Oh, I
Yes.
thought you said no.
Yeah, I was considering maybe, because I know all of these folks abstaining, but
Lolita
this
Haley,
isn't personally enriching me, so sure.
Yes. Todd Perkins.
Maria Lambert.
Yes.
I vote yes. Brady Mohammed,
Yes.
Yes.
vote is carried unanimously.
And Ms. Regal Miller, we didn't get the chair's vote. She also needs to vote.
I didn't hear what you said.
We didn't get the vote from the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We skipped the chair.
I always, because I don't start with you. Thank you. Betty Misaraka.
I vote yes because we have been with the other attorney for the last 3 or 4 years, so 3 years or 4, so I think it's good to get a different flavor.
Oh, is that a yes?
Yes,
Thank you.
Motion passes.
carried, correct? All right, so now, next on the agenda. Public comment. Is there any public comment?
I'm asking all Zoom participants to unmute themselves if we have any public comments for Zoom. We did not receive any emails, so we have no email public comments. And if anyone on Zoom would like to make a comment, now is the time to do so.
Want to repeat that, Gagny?
Yes, sorry. So I received no emailed public comments. I have asked all lines on Zoom to unmute themselves if they have a public comment. However, at this time, I do not see any hands raised for public comment on Zoom.
Thank you. So, comments, so let's move for, any move for adjournment?
Move for adjourn.
Second?
Moved by Tim,
No, Mr. Grady
I
Mohammed,
moved, ma'am.
Member Grady
Second.
I
Mohammed.
move for
Maria.
adjournment. Yes, ma'am.
Maria?
and thanks all for